Hey, it's KR from D&D Homebrew talking today about keeping your game moving. And, there's two things that, are possible when running an RPG. Things go too slowly or things go too fast. And neither of these is a great thing. But I think the more common complaint is things are moving too slowly. Because the thing is, you want to keep your players engaged in the game. And that means all the players at the table. So what I'm going to do is talk about things that you can do to keep the pace of your game going without losing out on, some suspense. If it does take some time, giving the players time to, do actions or complete their explorations, and including all of the players in your game without turning it into a slog, a slow process. And where this can come in a game like a Pathfinder or 5e or some other equivalent systems is you'll have players waiting in a combat situation for 15 minutes to act again. That is no good. I have had very complicated battles with all sorts of stuff going on, and they didn't have to wait 15 minutes. But they might have if I didn't use some techniques. One of the things that you can do if a player is taking too long, they're not ready, and they're looking at their thing, and we're all waiting, and there's complicated maneuvers to be made, and you can see this is going to be a problem. You've got to hurry. You've got to not hurry them, but say, you've got to act. It's a 6-second round. What are you doing? Or another thing you can do is to say to everyone at the table, before anyone's done this or after, everyone should be prepared when it's their turn. We've got to act, okay? You're still potentially going to have people who sit there and think and hem and haw. And the other thing is not allowing crosstalk, not allowing, first of all, it's good practice, not allow players in the middle of a combat to be able to talk to each other. They'll do it, though. They'll push, because especially if it's a deadly situation. But you're trying to create the idea of a combat where these 6-second turns, in theory, everyone's moving simultaneously. You have initiative systems, but really that's all that takes place. It's all supposed to be in 6 seconds. So the best way to keep them going on that is to just, if they're taking too much time, you've got to step in and say, you got to be ready and let's go. And I've seen people who, if you're not ready, they'll skip your turn. I don't do that. But everybody knows I sort of say, are you going to go or should we go on to the next person? Oh, I'm going to go. Okay. And then now again, you can get people that feel hurried by this. But if you give in to the person who feels hurried by this and allows them to think for 5 minutes, it's hurting everyone else at the table. So they've got to get their act together and they've got to, be ready. Another thing for engagement in a exploration or a social encounter is not to let one person go on and on and on for 10 minutes. This is why I don't like in-game, buying things or haggling for things. I don't like splitting the group where someone goes off, because they're seeing if it's a person that loves the spotlight, it's going to take a while. So if you're going to, you're going to have the the buying things, meeting this person, cut back and forth, do a little bit of them, and then cut to this person, and then cut to this person, and come back to this person. And the other thing is, if you do this more than twice, why is this happening? Why aren't we not wrapping this up? If they're trying to get something out of them and they make a good reason, don't play the game of, oh, I don't know. I mean, I'll have to check on that and all that kind of stuff. Because one of the things, if you're drawing things out, the players aren't, they're going to lose that engagement. Same way if you have someone's over here doing something and it takes 10 or 15 minutes. That's a long time. Because my prime thing is time is like gold in an RPG game. It is precious. For each session that you play, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever, that time slips away. And certainly for a one-shot or some kind of tournament game. So all these rules are based on that preciousness of time. The other thing that you can do is to have striking visual or auditory cues. You change the tone of your voice, some sound is heard, or they see some shocking sight. The other night I was playing in a game. We went into the room to talk to this guy, and his head had been split open and his brain removed. Well, that got our attention. I'll tell you that. And it's just a visual of that. So those are the kind of things, what's happening here, and there's a sense of urgency. Is that how quickly did this happen? Could they be still here? Again, shout, someone say, I'm going to get that guy, get that. People are reacting to things. That keeps the players engaged. And of course, the classic engagement issue is if there's table talk that has nothing to do with the game, people looking at funny memes, you got to cut that kind of stuff, You got to say, let's get back. Okay, so what are you doing again? Are you here? Are you there? If you had, now there's games where people just do that kind of thing. You may have players that they're used to that. But I'm just telling you, if you allowed all sorts of side conversations, and let's talk about the latest Star Wars movie or something, and have a 5-minute discussion, you're going to lose engagement. And there's going to be players that don't appreciate that. Now, the other thing about keeping your game moving is it supports the rhythm of storytelling. Because if you want to build tension, or if you want to build dread or horror or suspense, you can slow down the game. You begin to describe everything the players are doing as they creep along a hallway, or they approach a door, or they're entering the abandoned city. But then when things start to happen, you quicken the pace and things become very dynamic. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you all doing? What's going on? Things are happening. Well, that's basic storytelling. That's like editing, where in a film you can expand time. We've all seen this where someone's trying to do a safe or something, and there's people coming, or a guard, and everything is like, way taking longer than it would take, or, an escape. You've all seen this. Or, compressing time. And we're going to go to the city, and then they're walking into the city. So you don't need to necessarily say, well, I got to roll all my random monsters on the way to the city. Maybe that's the way you play, but that's going to slow your game down. That has nothing to do with the players. That's you, right? So you got to be sure that you think about how storytelling handles time and put that in your game. And part of this is techniques to frame action, where you say, you come into this bar and there's people fighting. There's a brawl going on. Well, that gets things going fast. You come in and you see the bartender in a heated discussion. You go to the store and someone's yelling at someone, or you go to the store and the merchant's laying there on the counter. And the players walk up and he's dead. And then the guards come in and say, what's this? That's in the action. That isn't, okay, I go to the store and the guy's there and he says, okay, let me talk to you. And then he goes in the back room and maybe you hear something, or he doesn't come back out. And you go back in there and he's dead, right? You can do it that way, but it's much more exciting to do it. They find him there and then the guards come in. What do you do, right? So another thing is to think about how much time you have for a session, whether it's 2 hours, 4 hours, or more, and maximize and think about where you should be in that session in terms of all the things we talked about, the engagement, the storylines, whatever. If you're halfway through the session and they're still on the road, right? They're still haggling for goods. There's going to be players who are not engaged. Your game is going too slowly. So you need to say, okay, you finished buying your thing. Let's say they take a little longer than you thought. So you're on the road and a day later, a day passes and you're in the next place. And you didn't necessarily roll for random monsters or anything, unless the players, they like battles and things. But I'm just, you want to get to where they're going so that they feel like they're accomplishing something. It isn't, one of the worst things in a campaign is where you spend 2 hours and you didn't do anything, or very little. Because that's long-term engagement gets lost, not just in the session. And of course, the classic is avoiding unnecessary rolls, whether that's challenge checks or skill checks, whether that's a battle that would just be a hand wave. Just avoid those, because that speeds the game up, especially if the players win. They never object to that. You're not going to do a hand wave and say, you're all dead. The other element is you can cut to the chase on things. If the players are waffling along and they're just signing this, you just say, okay, are you going to go to the docks? Okay, you're going to the docks. Here you are. You're at the docks. That's the other thing. Just, they're there. What are you looking for? You tell them the scene. What are you doing? Don't just don't let them. Again, you want them to decide, but I'm telling you, people can plan and plan and plan, and you're just sitting there. A lot of times there'll be players that say, what are we doing? Well, you can step in as a GM and say, okay, what are you doing? Here's another thing that may seem counterintuitive about maintaining tempo, which is to give everyone in the group a chance to shine, the spotlight on them. The reason this moves things forward is the people that love to hog all the spotlight often also take a long time to do things. Whereas the players that don't necessarily do that can get things done quickly, and suddenly you're moving forward. So you don't worry about the person that always hogs the spot. They're going to get their time in. But you use those people. You're sharing the spotlight, and you're allowing the people that aren't the ones that are always being at the forefront to make things move forward. Because you know what that does? It makes them want to be involved more. What they're doing is having an effect on the game and moving it along. and they're shining. And again, the person that hogs the spotlight, that they'll get there soon enough. And to structure the challenges that occur, whether it's social, exploration, or combat, that all the players are involved. I'm in Pathfinder playing that right now. The way that game is structured with the 3-act action economy and the skills and whatnot, it's very much a cooperative game. Everyone has different abilities and, skills and whatever that will help the group in all sorts of situations. It's balanced that way. But of course, you've got to set up encounters, whether they're social encounters or combat, exploration. You've got to set it up so that to think about what are the classes in your group, and how can I set that up so that each of them gets that chance to contribute. And the final thing that I would say is you're always reading the room when you're playing, even if they're friends of yours you've known for forever. Because sometimes players get tired, sometimes they get bored, sometimes they're revved up and just had a huge battle where everyone, was about to die. Tone it down. Either, have a period where they're just, they're traveling now and you're describing things and they go here or there. You can even take a physical 5-minute break. Typically I will ask my players if they want a break, and lately they all say no, they don't want a break. I mean, again, I'm doing this campaign I did the 5e and the Pathfinder. They never want to take a break, but I will take a break in terms of the action. You can't just have continue. You can't keep it up here all the time. You got to bring it back sometimes. So, and how you do that is to read how players, and again, if they get tired at the end, it's sometimes better to end 15 minutes early than go over 15 minutes if everyone's tired, because then you start not just making mistakes, but you start cutting corners and doing things you wouldn't do. And why? Let's go to the next session. Again, although I had groups where they say, no, we can stay, but I'm just watching to see if anybody looks like, if anybody right away goes, I could go. Okay, that person, they're tired. So you got to read that. And again, reading that also means, are they bored? Are they on their phone constantly? What's going on? Why? Because they're not taking part in this. So you got to always be reading and watching the players. So those are 5 tips to help you control the pace of your game and make it go fast. Because I'm telling you, if you keep it upbeat, not too fast, I guess I could do one. I will see it again in the comments about people want to say, how do you keep things slow? But for me, the biggest problem is always people going too slowly. And a shout out to my Patreon supporters. I did a 1-room dungeon called The Cult of Infinite Evil this week, which was quite fun. And if you like what you see, like it, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, my friends, keep playing an RPG game. As you know, I say this every day, whichever one you choose, tell somebody else about it.